This site here at the top of Kaiti Hill, overlooking the beautiful Moana, was once home to the statue of Captain Cook. In fact, the statue was here for almost 50 years, until last year. After long-term opposition from local iwi, the statue was removed and relocated to the Tairāwhiti Museum, its absence a reminder of how not just the statue, but the figure itself has divided the Gisborne community.
He came here and did some pretty atrocious things to our Indigenous people.
Oh, great navigator.
I think he's a part of our history, good or bad.
For me, I'm grateful for his discovery. If it wasn't him, it was going to be somebody else.
250 years ago, Cook sailed the Endeavour to New Zealand, landing here in Gisborne. More than $20 million in funding has been given to mark the event later this year. But Indigenous rights activist Tina Ngata is calling for a boycott.
I see him as a murderer, a mass murderer. I see him as a tool of a white supremacist machine of imperial expansion. What we know, the facts are that he was given orders to claim land only with consent, and he broke those orders and claimed land without consent.
Ngata has just returned from New York, where she spoke at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues.
It's really important that we focus on what he did, not what he said. I know a lot of his defenders like to point out the very nice things that he said about us, but those things were said while he was still killing us.
Like all activists, they take an extreme position to get some conversation going.
Lawyer and Cook enthusiast Joe Martin has studied the life of Captain Cook for more than 30 years and can quote many of his diary entries.
And he said these words, "I will reflect no further on this melancholy affair until I hear more about it. I must, however, observe in favour of the New Zealanders, for I've always found them to be a brave, noble, open and benevolent disposition. But they are a people who will not put up with an insult if they have an opportunity to resent it." In my view, those are the words of a wise and fair-minded man, not a mass murderer.
He says much of the debate around Cook comes down to a cultural misunderstanding.
A lot of history is not nice, okay? There's a lot of good things happen too. It's just a narrative of what has happened. It's the collective experience of mankind. That's what history is. We should not ignore history. We should always look at it.
Should we be celebrating it though?
No, we use the expression commemorate. Celebration, commemoration, it happened. It's a fact of the history of this country.
The way that we choose to characterise and remember people says a lot about who we are and what we value. And when you diminish the fact that he carried out mass slaughters of Indigenous people in favour of the fact that he was a skilled navigator, it says something about how much you value Indigenous people.
I invite people to read what he wrote, especially about Indigenous peoples in the Pacific and Australia. He's quite forward-thinking, and he's not the mass murderer. Those are egregious terms which I have no time for, really.
Local councillor Meredith Akuhata-Brown is welcoming the debate around one of our most defining moments.
Local iwi were killed, and that is the facts. And it's not about right or wrong in this space, it's just what it is. And it's uncomfortable to talk about. So, in my view, this gives a great space to do the courageous conversation and make things right.
The Cook statue will be on display at the Tairāwhiti Museum by the end of the year. Shiloh Keno, Local Focus.